Okay, so today I'm going to be showing you how I turn this cherry ring box. So I'm going to first start off with a 3 by 3 by 3 square, and I'm just going to start by turning it round. And my first goal is going to make it a smooth cylinder. Once I have a smooth cylinder, I'm going to start by turning a 2-inch foot on either side. And the reason why it's going to be a 2-inch foot on either side, so the foot itself is going to be 2 inches across, but it's only going to be about a 1/4 inch long. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow me to have something to grab onto with the jaws of my chuck. The reason why I want something to grab onto the jaws of the chuck is going to become more apparent as we get further through, but it'll allow me to grab onto either end of the box and have two pieces that I can independently manipulate with the lathe. Now, if you observe, I'm just checking the tin in there, making sure that it's of the appropriate diameter. And so now I'm going to turn the second foot on there. And so what I'm just doing here is just putting 2 feet on there, one on either end. One's going to end up being the lid side, and one's going to end up being the lower portion of the box side. And as you can see, the lid side is going to be towards the headstock of the lathe, and the bottom is going to be towards the tailstock as it sits right here. Now, I'm first going to start off with using the parting tool. I'm just going to start with a little bit of a mark there, and I'm going to work a gap to create a lid and a base. And once I get the areas that I want to make a lid and the area that I want to make a base, roughly the lid that I'm going to start off with is going to be roughly 1/3 the size of the base. So the base is actually going to be 2/3 the lid. So if you were to split it up into areas of 3, 1/3 would be the lid, 2/3 would be the base as we start off here. Now I'm not going to turn it through all the way. I'm just going to turn it through so that there's about a pinky width there and just break it off by hand. Now I'm going to mount the chuck. When I mount the chuck up onto the lathe, I'm going to now turn the base. And what I'm going to do with the base is I'm just going to hollow it out and almost scoop it out like a small bowl. Now what that's going to do is that's going to create the inside of the ring box. And now that's going to be where you store your ring. You can have as much, you can remove as much or as little material as you'd like here. I personally like to turn these so that they're about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch deep and about 1.5 inches across on the inside. If you'll notice, I'm also going to have a little bit of a lip there for the lid to sit over, so it's going to be like the tenon, and then the lid will be like a mortise that goes over top of that. Now, let me just grab something real quick. Alright, now I'm going to get my sandpapers, and I'm just going to go through the grits. When I sand the inside, I'm going to start off with an 80 grit, and then I'm going to move to a 120, and from the 120, I'm going to progress to a 220, and then I'm going to finish out on a 320. When I finish out on the 320, I'm going to apply some friction polish to the inside of the ring box, and the reason why I want to finish it now is because this is going to be the optimal time to finish it. As you'll see later on, when I put the lid over top, you're not going to have as good an opportunity to finish it afterwards without doing a lot of hand sanding and finishing for the inside of the box. Now just putting in some friction polish there. Be careful because you can you want to make sure you don't hurt yourself doing this, but just going to apply some friction polish in there. Make sure that it gets a nice high gloss finish in there. Alright, that looks good. Now, once I have that, the inside of the box is done for the base. Now I'm going to mount the lid up. Likewise, now I'm going to be turning the inside of the lid. And so, as you can see, that's how the lid and the base marry. And we have to turn the mortise for the lid so that way the tenon or the lip of the base sits right inside of there. And so now we're just going to use the bowl gouge here and just remove a little bit of material from the inside, and then we're going to finish up the shoulder with the parting tool. And if you have a set of easy rougher or the Easy Wood Tools, the one with a square shoulder would work for this too. Now I'm just going to touch it up again. Now there's going to be a little bit of a guess and check almost, where I remove a little bit of material and then I bring up the base of the box. And what I do is when I do that is I'm putting it in there, just making sure that the tolerances aren't too tight. All right, it seats good there. And so I want it to sit snug, but not so snug that it's a struggle to get on, and not too loose that it wobbles around. So now I'm going to bring up the tailstock. I'm going to use the tailstock to hold the base of the lid, or the base of the box to the lid, and make sort of a jam chuck. And when I use this jam chuck, it's going to be to just finish out the outside of the box. And really we're going to be focusing on the outside of the top of the lip for the lid. And then we're going to also be turning the base of the box here as well. Now for the base of the box, this is going to have to be where we finish out the box. And for the lid, we're going to have, we're going to actually finish that out by flipping it over on the chuck. And so what we're dealing with here is we're turning the shape that we want on the outside of the base and the lid. And whatever shape you necessarily want to turn, I like to do a slightly taper on the base. I like to change these up actually a little bit to make each one unique. And so on this one, I'm going to go slightly harder angles. One of the things with the cherry wood that I find is cherry has a tendency to tear out more than some other woods. And so as I go along here, I'm going to want to check for tear out before I sand. If you have tear out and you're not necessarily comfortable with getting a clean cut off of the tool, you can just sand it down. That being said, make sure that you're aware of approximately what material you've removed from the inside of the box so you don't go through the side. So now I'm just going to finish up the outside of the box here. I burned 2 rings in there, just using a guitar string there. And so now we're going to start off by finishing up the outside of the box. And really here, the base is going to be finished after this step. So what we're just doing is we're just going to take, right now I'm just whittling down the bottom there, and it's going to give me a peg that I can break off. And what that's going to do is then I can finish up the outside of the box, have a friction polish finish on there, and then the bottom will just finish by hand. So now I'm just going to sand this one down and see what it looks like. Because like I said, if you have tear out, one of the things you want to make sure you're looking for is make sure at each grit of the sandpaper that it's going away. And you want to be really methodical with that. On this one, I'm just turning it and making sure that I didn't have any tear out, so I'm just making sure that I'm not removing too much material. I'm trying to do as little sanding as possible because I really like the shape, and if you sand a lot, you can actually mess up the shape that you have kind of sculpted into the workpiece here. Alright, so now I'm just applying a friction polish finish. And now we have that, we just apply a little bit of friction and it will generate some heat, and that'll give you a nice glossy finish there. I like to be a little bit careful because it can get hot on your fingers there. So as you see, I'm trying to double up well, I'm actually using a paper towel with friction polish on it. So there you see, base had a little bit of a tenon on there, but I'll just finish that up by hand. Now I flipped the lid up and I've actually opened up the chuck jaws on the inside of the lid. Now I'm going to finish out the top of the lid. So if you notice when I do this, I'm not going to necessarily touch the side of the lid. I'm just focusing on the top. On the top of this lid, while some people might like to turn a little bit of like a foot or like a little handle on the lid, I find that I like to have a nice smooth lid for something smaller like this because it allows me to just grab the rim of the lid and pull it open. And as long as the workpiece has a good tolerance between the lid and the base, it doesn't necessarily matter how you finish it up, but I like the clean finish on the top because that way you can get a nice piece, a nice look at the crossed grain on the top of the lid for the ring box. So right here, I'm just trying to get a clean cut. And again, with the tear out, I'm trying to make sure that there's no tear out that's going to show up in the final workpiece. And if there is a little bit of tear out, I find that as long as I have a nice sharp tool with a fresh edge, then I can normally take any tear out just by cutting real carefully. And I find that that tends for me to be more effective than sanding. So now again, I've got that lid down to the shape that I want. And now I'm just going to finish it out with sanding. And I'm going to go through the grits on that again. And once I get through all 4 grits, I'm going to go through again and just touch it up with the friction polish. Got one more grit here. Alright, oh, my bad, that's the purple. So the purple is the 220 there. I think I got one more to get the 320 with the red grit there. Alright. Let's see. One thing I want to make sure there is that after I get through all the grits, to look at the top of the lid there and make sure that it doesn't have any tear out or anything that like lines from sandpaper in it before I put the friction polish on. I got a little bit hot there. I'm just gonna double up the paper towel there to try to protect my hand a little bit better. So again, I'm gonna apply some friction and try to get a nice glossy finish with the friction polish there. Alright, that looks good. Now, let's see. Alright, and there it is. And so now the ring box is complete. And I have some photos that I'm going to just play through here. Just going to show you a few different views of this ring box. That way you can see how it looks. Hopefully your ring box that you make comes out pretty similar to this. But here's a few photos. Got a couple different angles. Feel free to look at the different angles. And thank you for watching. Bye.